It's so good to have you. Thanks for joining us on the program today. Our focus today is to help you create and keep more money. I once had an associate who said, money isn't everything unless you don't have enough of it, and then it becomes everything. Isn't that the truth? And in today's world, we hear a lot of stories of people struggling because they've lost their jobs, and frankly, cash flow is kind of a pinch. So let's help out with that today. Today's program is being brought to you by StreamYard. Put the power of live streaming to work for you and your business. Go to StreamYardCause.com now. That's StreamYardCause.com and be able to stream live to Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Periscope, and more. We're using StreamYard right now to broadcast this program to you. So go to StreamYardCause.com, get your free account, and also get a $10 credit. That's StreamYardCause.com. My guest today was able to retire not once, but twice by the time he was 39 years old. But he's not content with just enjoying his own financial freedom and peace of mind. He wants you to have your own ripple effect so you can live free today. He's not the financial advisor you expected. He's the anti-financial advisor you deserve. He's the cash flow expert and is a leading authority on how to quickly create cash flow and lasting wealth for thousands of his clients and entrepreneurs internationally. He's been featured in U.S. News, CNN Money, Bankrate.com, and has a high reputation for getting his clients life-altering financial results with his company, Money Ripples. He is married to Adees, and they live together with their 8 children in Draper, Utah. Welcome to the program, Chris Miles.
Hey, such a pleasure being here, man.
Hey, it's great to have you. So let's start off on an interesting note. You believe that most financial advising sucks. Not financial advisors suck, but most financial advice sucks. Where does that philosophy come from?
It comes from me being a financial advisor, one of those guys, right? So, yeah, I'll definitely say that having been a financial advisor, I started doing that 18 years ago, right? I became the traditional mainstream financial advisor you always hear about, the save everything, spend nothing, save it forever. And so hopefully someday you might be able to retire unless it just doesn't work out, right? And that was kind of my philosophy for a while. And the thing is, I know this is for a fact, most financial advisors have a good heart. They mean and intend well, but they're trained by banks and other institutions that tell you what to believe, right? And after I was in that industry for a couple years, right? I was in it for 4 years total, but when it got to about that 3rd to 4th year, when I started to look at real numbers, right? Like the real numbers, not like the ones they tell you, because they always tell you, hey, if you save this, so much money for 40 years and it makes you 10 or 12% a year, you'll have millions of dollars, right? And then you'll be able to retire. But when I would try to do people's plans, I like evidence. I like things that are real. And so I started to realize, wait, those average returns aren't the real returns that are in the stock market. Like, for example, last 30 years, the real rate of return of the S&P 500 is 7.5%, not 12, 7.5, right? Well, when it's 7.5, you start putting those numbers in as a financial advisor, you say, ugh, that doesn't look as good, right? Then you keep going. You're like, well, wait, inflation is not what the government says because they're trying to be cheap with Social Security right now. Well, what if it's actually 4 or 5%, which is more closer to what the reality is? So you're only earning, maybe after fees, you're maybe earning in your funds 6% a year, plus you have 4 or 5% inflation. You're barely just keeping up with inflation. And what happens if you have a 20-year retirement goal to actually live on a $60,000 a year lifestyle, nothing grand, right? Just $60,000 a year, $5,000 a month. You got to start saving right now about $8,300 a month to retire in 20 years. And when I started to try to show people the real numbers, it was depressing because it was like, oh, they're trying to save only $12,000 a year or $20,000 a year even. Even if they save that much, there's no hope. There's no way they'll be able to retire. And so I thought, well, maybe I'll just lower these numbers, adjust some things and tweak it. And then I realized I'm sacrificing my integrity to try to make it work. And that's when in 2006, a friend of mine who actually trained to be a financial advisor left to go do real estate investing, said, Chris, how many of your clients are actually financially free? I'm like, none. All right, Chris, how about this? How many of you guys as financial advisors are financially free, not off of the commissions you guys are earning, right? But actually off the investments you've been recommending, these mutual funds that haven't helped your clients either. Because guys have been in the industry for 35, 40 years. So they should be retired, right? How many of them can retire? None. That's my point, Chris. And that's where 2006, I said, that's it. I'm done. I can never teach this stuff again. I'm out of here. I will just go and be a mortgage broker, and I will teach ballroom dancing at the local university. So a little interesting side note, I was one of the nation's top amateur ballroom dancers, right? So I started doing that. But I started learning from these guys that were self-made millionaires, guys that were investing in their businesses or in real estate and things like that. And when I started to realize that everything that they believed in was the opposite of what I taught as a financial advisor, they were laughing and scorning at that advice. I started to realize, wait, if I start to follow them instead of the financial advising that hasn't worked, well, then maybe I can do it too. And later that year, I was able to retire myself when I was just 28 years old. So that's the key thing, is that, again, it's not about the fact that financial advisors are trying to dupe you, right? But if they actually do question things, then they have this dilemma. It's like, well, do I destroy my career to stay in integrity, or do I just keep saying, well, it's better than nothing, right? It's not going to work, but at least it's better than nothing. And that's the problem. What we're running into is that people believe this advice works. All the Dave Ramsey, the Susie Ormans, they think it works, and it doesn't. People are not becoming free.
Okay, now that's a bold statement right there. So, and I have my own issues with Susie Orman, so I'm okay with you there. For those that listen to Dave Ramsey and others, how are they misguided, or where are they missing it then? How does it not work?
Yeah, Dave Ramsey is really good. If you're a horrible, if you need Spenders Anonymous, right? Like if you're in that kind of situation, you need Dave Ramsey, right? But here's the thing. Most people that are in that category don't want to listen to Dave Ramsey anyways, right? The people that actually like Dave Ramsey's are the people that are the self-floggers. Like they already feel guilty and shameful. They feel like they need to save more.
Yeah.
So they can never save enough, right? They're in that saver scarcity mentality of you can't save enough, you can't pay off debt fast enough. And those are the ones that listen to him. The problem is they already believe what he believes, right? So they're not really being introduced to anything new for them. Again, he does good work for the people that need him. But once you get to be middle class to middle upper class and above, his advice is horrible, right? It just doesn't work.
How so?
Well, yeah, I'll give you an example. Like he's always about trying to get you to zero, right? Pay off all your debt. Now he claims that if you pay off all your debt, you're free. But let's just say that 1/4 of your money, your income, is going to debt, which is kind of less than a lot of Americans, but let's just say that's what it is. Because most of the saver people, less than 1/4 of their money is going to debt payments, right? Well, say you get rid of all those payments, you still have the other 75% to pay. You still have bills. You still have to eat. You still have to do things, right? And it never gets cheaper because inflation keeps going up. So when people get debt free, then they're like, oh, well, I better start saving now. And then they start dumping it into these credit mutual funds that pay at best 6.5% after you've paid your fees and stuff to the financial advising companies, right? So when you try to do that, now you're just like this Dalmatian trying to chase after a fire truck. You're just not going to get there. And so I get a lot of these people that are the Dave Ramsey poster children that reach out to me saying, Chris, all right, I got debt free. Some of them have even paid off their mortgages. Others that just only have the mortgage left. But they say, and I've saved several $100,000 in the market, but there's no way I'll be able to retire. I did the math. I will never be able to retire at this rate. And that's the truth. After people get off the air with him screaming freedom, the whole Braveheart music going off and crap like that. What happens is reality sets in. They realize, oh, well, yeah, I don't have debt at least. And they try to focus on that to feel good. But the truth is they're still living in fear. They still feel like they can't save enough. And that's true because they keep going the traditional route. That traditional advice doesn't work. Even he believes the stock market pays 12%. And that's never, ever been the case. So again, he's not a bad guy. My wife actually was the very first instructor in the state of Utah to get trained by him. So if anything, I'm kind of living with the enemy, if you were to think of it that way. But the truth is,
Sleeping with the Enemy.
That's right, sleeping with the enemy. Yeah, but here's the thing: like he's a great guy. He doesn't actually follow his advice perfectly. He still does things like what I teach, but he doesn't teach the masses because he knows they're not ready for it. Because he's trying to teach to the person that makes $30,000 or $40,000 a year, not to the person that's like a lot of us that are making way more than that, or even a little more than that, right? And so that's the thing. Again, it has to be the right fit for your situation, and it's got to be about cash flow. What does it actually do to create income for you now? Because that's what everybody's doing here. They're all trying to figure out, how do I either have more income coming in than my expenses going out, right? That's what we want. We want to be able to work because we want to, not because we have to.
So what myths did we grow up with as Americans? Because I mean, I think way back in middle school or something, I took business math and they taught you how to do a checkbook and some basic general ledger type stuff. But other than that, we don't develop those life skills unless we learn it in the home or have a good mentor. So what are some of the myths that are perpetuated in our society that simply aren't true and may actually cause more damage than good?
Yeah. A good myth is save 10 or 20% of your income, right? I mean, when we were growing up, they would just say, you save 10% of your income, you'll be fine, right? Now, remember, the rules keep changing. I mean, our grandparents, even some of our parents, depending on their ages, right? They had the promise of pensions. They had the promise of Social Security. And in many cases, they don't need it. So to give you an example, I taught a local retirement class to my neighborhood here, right? And one of the guys that was there was already retired. He was in his 70s. He was even get this, he was a former financial planner. And people are like, oh, you're retired. Now they didn't realize that I was also retired too, right? At half his age. But they're like, well, you're retired. What did you do? He said, well, I just saved my money in my stocks and mutual funds and my 401ks and IRAs. And I did that for years. And now I'm retired and I live pretty comfortably. In fact, you don't have to live on that much. I'm pretty cheap, and I know he is, because I followed him around Harmon's when he was eating all the samples. He basically got lunch eating people's samples, right? This is pre-COVID.
COVID.
Yeah, pre-COVID, of course.
COVID, you can't go do your buffet at Costco on Saturdays anymore. He's going to have to.
His expenses just went up. Yeah. Yeah. But anyways, I mean, great guy. But when we started to dive into it, it's like, great. Well, what did you have? He said, well, I had my military pension that was coming in, for one. Oh, and I work for a company. There's a pension from that too. Oh, and then I have Social Security. I was like, oh, well, do you really need the money from your retirement accounts? No, not really. But so that's not our world.
He's triple dipping.
He's triple dipping, right? And that's
awesome. People are not going to triple dip.
No, it's just not our world today. You might get Social Security if we're lucky, right? And even if you get it, it's not that much. It's not going to really cover a whole lot for you. So you have to make up the difference. You don't have the pensions to rely on anymore. Even if you're a teacher, even those are starting to go away, right? So there's strikes and things happening, trying to fight for their pensions or whatever they can get in retirement. So we have to take more ownership. So to think we can save 10% of our income and retire is false. The truth is, if you're trying to save, and again, I talked about the myth that the return of the stock market is 10 or 12%. That's also false. There's the myth that your 401k is free money, right? But the truth is, with the match and everything, it barely pays your taxes. It only adds another 2 or 3% a year compounded over time. Not 100%, right? It's not 100% return like people claim. It's only about a 2 to 3% total return long term.
How so?
Well, for example, if you've heard like the rule of 72, right?
Sure.
It basically just states that, if you're trying to double your money in any given number of years, whatever the interest rate is, you divide it by 72, and that's how many years it takes to double. So if it's if it's 1% savings account, it's going to take 72 years before 1% doubles your money, right? If it's 2%, it takes 36 years. Well, here's the thing: even if you get 100% match, which most people are doing above what they get for that 100%, because the companies will stop at like 6% if they pay 100%. Most are paying 50, but even if they pay 100, they stop. So most people are still putting in way more than the match. They're not getting a full 100% anyways. But here's the kicker: even if you said, I'm only putting in up to the match and they match me 100%, so I'm putting in 6, they put in 6, 100% return, right? I challenge you, go to a calculator online like calculator.net, go to an interest calculator, putting in say it's $12,000 a year at 100% rate of return after 20 years, and see just how many millions and millions of dollars you have. I guarantee you will never have millions and millions of dollars. I even joke to people, if you have $100,000, you make 100% a year on, you're actually richer than Bezos, right? In just like 20 years. That will never happen. Nobody ever gets wealthy with a 401k ever. And so, but the truth is that your money does double in the end. So if you would have normally said you would have ended with 1 million at the end of that money, or at the end of that time period, With the match, you would just be at 2 million. You'd just be double. So everything is double. It's 100% return. But when you start dividing it up over those years, say you save that for 40 years, right? That double in 40 years, that rule 72 means it was less than 2%, right?
Oh, I see.
So I didn't understand that either as a financial advisor. I was like, wait. No, it's 100% return, but it's not, because it's not a true 100% return. In the first year, awesome. You double your money. And then if you could pull the money right back out, it'd be awesome. But the truth is that you're going to have locked your money up into prison. You're locking your money in there in a 401k. The other myth is you're locking your money into your house, trying to pay off your debt. But when you lock your money into your home, you can't get it out. I learned that in the last recession. I actually, when I retired in 2006, I came out of retirement in 2007 to teach people how to do what I did, cut off my multiple streams of income to focus on just that business, right? Mistake number one. Mistake number two is I believe Dave Ramsey. I started dumping money into paying off my house because I had more than enough money. It was like air, So I started paying off my house. Well, when the recession hit and I said, oh, shoot, well, I've got equity in my house. Can I get it out? The bank said no, because I gave them the power. I gave them the money.
Yes.
It's like asking mom and dad for the car keys to the car you bought, right? It's horrible. It's the same thing with 401k. You try to get your own money out and they slap you with a 10% penalty and taxes, right? It's ridiculous.
So define retirement though, because I guess theoretically I retired last fall, right? And then you switch gears and you do things a little bit different, but you're really not retired because you're still doing what you love and you're working. I guess define that term. You're financially free that you don't have to work.
Right. Is that I work about 10 or 20 hours a week right now. So I kind of work semi-retired, right? What I mean by being able to retire is you're financially independent. It means that your expenses, your expenses are being paid by your other streams of income, whether it's investment income, business, like residual income, not active income, right? But like actually money that you don't have to work for anymore. That's what I mean by being financially independent or be able to retire, right?
Gotcha. Because frankly, I don't think I'll ever retire in the traditional sense of the word, unless you got to be a greeter at Walmart or something. But
I tried it.
Not that there's anything wrong with that. But what I'm saying is, I don't know. I just don't think I have the makeup that I'm just not going to do what I do 40, 50, 60 hours a week,
Yeah, I tried it. Like I tried to retire twice, right? Like in 2006, I was sitting around twiddling my thumbs. My wife said, at that time, she's like, get out, like go find something to do, get a hobby,
right? Your first wife, right?
This is my first wife, right?
Yeah.
And then, the second time around, I was able to retire again 4 years ago. I was able to dig out of the hole. I actually went over $1 million in debt with everything that happened with the real estate markets and business and everything. Like it was like the perfect storm. It worked against me. I went from financially independent, right, to all of a sudden now being in the hole, $15,000, $16,000 a month that I was short. And so I went into over $1 million of debt, didn't file for bankruptcy, but I did have to dig out pretty slowly, climb my way back out to where I was able to do it again, whereas again, financially independent, but this time with a bigger number and more things in place to protect myself by the end of 2016 when I was 39. And that's why it happened twice. I don't recommend retiring twice. I recommend once and not making the mistake. So you have to do it twice.
Is all debt bad?
No, not at all. That's another one that's a myth. No, I mean, debt can be bad for the wrong person, right? I think of it, there's three mindsets around money. There's the spender mindset, like we already talked about, like it's easy come, easy go. They're always working hard to try to pay for their lifestyle, right? There's the saver mindset, which they also think they're spenders, but they're not. They're the ones that always worry about spending too much, right? They can never save enough. They can never, pay off debt fast enough, but they think they're always spending money because they have to spend $1. That's bad. That's how you know you're a saver. If you feel guilty for spending money. Both are in scarcity and both do not lead to financial freedom. The only one that leads to freedom is being a steward. A steward is right in the middle. They take the best of the spender and the saver and put into one. Because at least a saver, at least they're willing to be wise and think about what they're doing. They just don't often take action to do anything that creates freedom. On the flip side, spenders are willing to use money. And that's what you should be as a steward. You're willing to use and put money to work for you. That's the key. Now, if you have debt and you're a spender, bad idea, because you'll just blow it. You'll just make it worse. For you, keeping money out of your hands may not be a bad thing. Maybe forced payments into paying off your mortgage would be a good thing. I'm not usually talking to those people. I'm usually talking to people that are like the guilt-ridden savers, right? Or the ones that do want to be stewards. Those people where they're already, for them, debt seems a crazy thing and it seems horrible, but it may not be. Give you an example. I just, I have a client that reached out to me. They've worked with me for several years. They said, all right, Chris, we're thinking about trying to retire soon. We know that we're not there yet. Now my husband and I are having a conflict. This, by the way, this is just an email I had like a few minutes ago before the show. They said, all right, our home is worth $400,000. We owe $210,000. We're paying over $1,200 a month on it. So we're 22 years away from paying off our house. My husband wants to do a 15-year mortgage and pay it off sooner. I'm thinking refinance to a lower rate because they're at 4.5%. They're like, I'm thinking about refinance to a lower rate, keeping it at 30 years so we keep the payment down and we can retire more easily. Otherwise, the expense goes up because if they do a 15-year mortgage, even with a 2.5% interest rate, they're paying $200 more a month for that mortgage, which means they're at higher risk, right? Until that mortgage is paid off. So they said, what do we do? I said, well, you can refinance it and just do that. The simple refinance, you could do that at 3% even right now, or less possibly. I just had a client close at 2.88% just this week. So dirt cheap mortgage rates right now. I said, even if it was at 3%, your payment would actually save you over $300 a month. So even if you just refinance it to a 30-year, that $300 a month, you could take and put that away into equity, but just not inside your house where it's trapped. Keep it in like a savings account or something, or you could do something else with it. I said, or you could even do a cash out refinance where you get money out, which she had considered, but he was thinking, well, I don't know if I should do that. I said, if you cash out refinance, you can get up to 80% of your value of your home. So you still leave 20% in for safety. Well, you'd be able to get $105,000 out. Now, what could you do with that $105,000? Like you could go and buy properties that easily right now you can make a 12% cash on cash return, meaning you can make 1% a month on your money. So you can make $1,050 a month net cash flow off a property right now. So that $1,050 a month, even though you have a $1,400 a month mortgage payment, that $1,050 a month is offsetting your mortgage payment. You're almost mortgage free net. But I said, but that's not all. But wait, there's more, right? I said, if your goal is to just pay off this house, think of it this way. If your goal is to pay off this house, say you bought these properties, you buy almost $500,000 properties with that $105,000, right? Well, with that, I said, if your cash flow is $1,050 a month, after 5 years, you've made $63,000. By the way, your renters have paid down for you $39,000 of mortgage balances on these properties because every time they pay rent, you're just taking that rent and paying off the mortgage. That $63,000 is on top of that extra $39,000. So even if the market didn't appreciate, you still made over $100,000 in 5 years with that $100,000, right? I was like, but wait, what if the market only appreciated 20% over that 5 years? That means it's only averaging about 3 to 4% a year. That's it. If it only if only did 20%, you just made another $95,000 of appreciation on top of it because you had $500,000 of properties. So lo and behold, guess what? You've now just made your $105,000 now has become over $300,000. I said, and here's the kicker: your mortgage that you just refinanced now has been paid down to $287,000. You have enough money to pay off your mortgage in 5 years, not with the same payment you would have done as a 15-year mortgage, but now you have all the risk, right? Now you have a lower payment, you have income coming in versus just expense going out. So a very different way of thinking, very different way of looking at it. But again, you have to be the right steward. You got to know what you're doing, and you need that guidance to make sure you're doing the right things. Because people that just go in blindly could also screw it up and make the opposite happen, right? So you got to make sure you're a wise steward when you're doing this kind of thing.
So for you watching or listening, if you go to moneyripples.com, Chris has a free ebook you can download there in exchange for your email called Beyond Rice and Beans. So just want to make that available to all of our viewers and listeners today. Go to moneyripples.com for a free download, Beyond Rice and Beans. What are other common mistakes that we as Americans make? Because we can look at all the statistics that say really it's the top 1% that, well, look, let's use New York as an example. Okay, because New York is dying, whichever article you want to read. Some will say it's not, some will say it is, because the top 1% of New Yorkers pay 50% of all the taxes that run New York City. So when people mock the 1%, God bless the 1% who really do so much. I mean, it's what the top 9 or 10% pay 50% of all the taxes in America anyway, because 51% of Americans don't pay income tax now. And I think that's part of the political strategy, is to get the majority of people not paying income tax, because then they can herd them like sheep, right? Because they're all on the government dole in some way. But if this is the richest, most abundant society ever known in the history of man, why do so many Americans suck at their money? Where's it coming from?
It comes from banks and financial institutions. I mean, we have been taught and trained, and this is why I realized as a financial advisor, when people look at us as being the experts, right? I started to realize, well, who am I trained by? You got to really go back to the source of who's training financial advisors, because financial advisors really are just salesmen in suits. They aren't like these majorly complex or brilliant people, right? I mean, even when you talk about the mutual fund world, I started to realize as I got away from it, it's really all the same talk. You don't have to study a whole lot to do it, because you're not even investing the money. You're letting other fund managers do it. You're just trying to say, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, I like this fund, right? Or, here, take this risk assessment and figure out which ones you should be in. I don't have to do any of the work, and I don't have any of the risk, because, hey, in fact, I'm so excited, I'm going to smack my mic, like that kind of stuff just happens, but when you look at it, the training all comes from the institutions that the advisors work for, the companies that are like the Merrill Lynch's, right? The companies are like the Fidelities and the Goldman Sachs and all that kind of stuff. All these companies are passing down stuff for you to teach to sell for them. So really what we're getting a lot of people trained to be just like automaton employees. When we go through public school, same thing with money. We're just automatons, just trying to throw our money in, let it sit there forever, while the banks and the institutions are making money guaranteed. They're not, by the way, taking high risk, create high returns. That has never been true in real life. I mean, let's apply high risk, create high returns in real life, right? Let's do this with health. I should go eat at McDonald's every day. I'll get high returns of cholesterol maybe, but I'm not going to live longer, right? Take high risk with my family, like with my kids. Well, you know what? I should tell them go play in the freeway. See how many kids I have left. Probably still more than the average American, right? But
you would.
I would, but yeah, I mean, take high risk in my marriage, do things to destroy my marriage. That's not good. Why would we do that with our money? Well, that's because institutions don't want to take any of the risk. They pass it on to you. They say, here, you take the risk. We'll take our guaranteed fees that come out each and every year. In fact, you should live on less than the interest, because then your principal keeps growing even in retirement. And by the way, what also keeps growing is our fees coming out, because those just keep coming out. We get guaranteed revenue streams from you letting your money sit there in fear, or sit there from this accumulation mindset, when it should be an acceleration cash flow mindset, which is more of that steward mindset. And that's when you start to realize, I can take control of my own money and do a better job than them, because the truth is that they're just letting me throw my money in there, and then they take out their fees all the time. That's the thing. We're trained based on trillions of dollars of marketing, right? That's all it is. The 1%, like you said, or even I would say even the top 5 or 10%, they get this. They understand this. They look past it and say that advice, ridiculous. That's what broke people do. That's what people that want to stay broke their entire lives will keep doing, and wonder why they're slaves to money. It's pure. It's really just logic. You just trace it, and it's obvious, plain as day.
Back to that, we're the most abundant society ever known in the history of man, and you believe that, correct?
I believe that we have more abundance and more scarcity all at the same time. Yep.
Okay, that's definitely fair.
Scarcity thinking with abundant resources. How about that?
Okay, I'm with you 100% on that, because I don't care which study you look at. 1% retires like wealthy. The top, then 3% have financial independence, 5% have some amount of savings or whatever. So it really is, the top 20% really is not dependent on the government. But 80% of Americans are completely dependent on the government for their long-term financial stability. That's scary.
Yeah, and it's not their fault.
What's going on? Because they're spending they're printing money because they're printing money. Real. It's not. It's monopoly money at this point.
Right. Yeah, it's not their fault. I mean, that's the thing. There's just like me. I was the financial advisor, and I didn't know this stuff, right? I was supposed to be the guy who had it figured out, and I didn't know until I met people that were free. So I don't blame most Americans for this. I blame the fact that there is a lot of self-interest, right? Which again, I think the country, we all thrive on self-interest. Self-interest is what makes a capitalist society work,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
But when that self-interest also sacrifices somebody else, when it becomes a win-lose scenario versus a win-win, that's when things suffer, right? And so there are people profiting on people's ignorance, plain as day. This is why also when people say, oh, politicians, they don't know how to spend money. Well, guess what? You just voted those politicians out of the same general public that believes the same thing you do. In fact, you vote for people that think like you do. That's why you're in the crap hole you're in. Why wouldn't the country be in a crap hole with debt and everything else they're creating when the rest of the country thinks the same way and they're doing the same things? It's just politicians are just a reflection of who we are, right? It's not because they're any better than any of the rest of us. We take them out of the general population, throw up on a pedestal and say, you fix my problem because I don't know how to fix it. And then they don't know how to fix it either. It's, like I said, like that's the thing. It's the blind leading the blind.
So what's the answer? Where do we start?
The answer is you start
at moneyripples.com, that and listen to the Chris Miles Show, available wherever you get your podcasts.
That's for sure. The Chris Miles Money Show, I go into a lot of this kind of stuff. That's a good start. It's a good free resource you can use, or my website as well. There's free resources there. But it really starts with you questioning everything you've been taught. Really, just like I had to do as a financial advisor. I did something that was so rare because, well, one, I had a question, when I'm teaching, really, does it really work, right? And it was hard to admit that. And then the second thing that was hard was, well, if I'm going to stay in integrity, should I still be doing this business, right? And that's why I left. Thanks, Angela. I agree, but Angela's a good example of that too. He's definitely one of those guys that's changed his mindset and doing something different. And that's the key, right? It's about shifting that mindset, questioning everything you've been taught, looking to see what evidence, like what do people actually do? The wealthy. Most people aren't born into wealth. They're definitely those people, but there's a lot of first generation self-made millionaires. Now, a lot of them did in business, which is awesome. And I definitely recommend that could be your number one investment, right? But there's other ways to do it too, because the second way is real estate or doing other types of things like that. Think of, John F. Kennedy would never have been JFK had it not been for his father, who before the Great Depression was a bootlegger. By the way, in 1929, John F. Kennedy's father was worth $4 million. At the end of the Great Depression, by about 1937, John Kennedy's dad went from $4 million to $100 million. Because what he did, he went away from the bootlegging because they got rid of the prohibition, right? So his business was gone, but he saw opportunity. He saw there's lots of commercial buildings in New York, kind of like what we might see in the future now, a lot of commercial buildings in New York that were selling for cheap. So he took that money instead, went and bought real estate at dirt cheap prices. And then eventually when things started to recover, his $4 million became $100 million, not from bootlegging, but from actually finding ways to seize the opportunity. And for you guys to do that differently, it means you got to have cash available. You can't just keep locking it up in your 401ks and IRAs. You can't keep locking it up in your houses and taking the money away from you. And everybody, and specifically financial institutions control, whether it's a bank or a mutual fund company, you're sticking in their control where you have no control over it. Get it in your own control and then find ways to empower yourself to actually go and use your money in a way that creates passive, real income now. And your life will change.
I liked what your quote that you said that Angelo made a point of, and I wholeheartedly believe this. Mm-hmm. There is a great divide in the country between abundant thinkers and those with the scarcity mentality, but I believe it's always been so. Yeah. I think the default position for most human beings is a scarcity mentality. Mm-hmm. That really it is a certain percentage of our population who really understand abundance, abundance, their ability to go create it and then go out there and be able to seize it. So what's some practical information or counsel that you would share for folks right now? I mean, it's a crazy world. We still have high unemployment. Granted, it didn't go to the 32% we kind of expected it to be, but it's still at 11%. It hasn't completely rebounded. We don't know what's going to be locked down and locked up and who's doing what. What are some of the basics that we need to be focusing in on right now based on current conditions?
I think that abundance mentality you mentioned is the key. Like that was the first thing I started to learn before I learned the strategies, right? Because learning the strategies of how to invest are actually not that hard once you understand the way to think and see things differently. So for example, you mentioned different things about being a creator versus being a consumer, right? Most people don't think about how can I create something? How can I go and create value? How can I provide solutions for others? When I realized, like the one thing that got me to retire first in 2006, the question I obsessed over was, how can I create a win-win for people? How can I provide solutions or, provide some sort of value that money is just a natural byproduct? Because see, understand, even as a financial advisor, after 4 years, I still thought money was mysterious in some ways, like the making of money. Saving it and throwing it away and locking it away and never looking at it again and hoping it'll grow by itself. That was one thing. Making money was another. Because I believed in this scarcity, win, lose, zero sum game, right? That somebody had to win for, somebody had to lose for somebody to win, right? Or vice versa. If somebody won, somebody else lost, if somebody made money, it's because somebody lost money. That's how I always was viewing money. So I would cut my commissions down to nothing as a financial advisor because I was like, well, I don't want to take away money from people, right? So I'd cut it down to nothing. I cut my mortgage broker fees down to nothing. And then the funny thing is, people wouldn't want to do business with me. Ironically, when I went and charged the normal 1% broker fee for a mortgage, that's when everybody actually started to not only use me and hire me, or like use my, my mortgage services, right? But they would even refer other people. They would actually be more satisfied paying the standard fee than it was when I was trying to nickel and dime them down to nothing, try to be cheap. Because again, I was trying to, kill myself in order for somebody else to gain. That's not the world we live in. If you look for how to create a win-win scenario, like how can I create value for you? How can I provide more value so that because I'm in your life improves. If you do that, money is often the medium of exchange people use. It's easy to create that money. And so if you look at that there is an abundance of money, and it's not just the scarce resources, like economics is a study of scarce resources. Understand that the key thing, whether an economy goes into depression or it prospers, the key thing that happens is, one is value creation, right? Always focus on creating value for people. And then two is exchange. How fast can we exchange value and money with each other? See, like right now, the reason why we're seeing everything propped up right now is because the government keeps throwing money, so we keep using money to exchange. But when fear creeps in, this is why a depression is worse than a recession, right? When fear creeps in, people start holding on to their money with an iron grip. That saver mentality, believe it or not, can actually cripple a society. Because if they try to hold on to money and not ever use it, not spend it, well, then people don't get paid. I mean, if people don't get paid, they can't pay you. Therefore, you don't get paid. And the faster we exchange money, even if it's a limited resource, it's like, even if all you had was $100, if you only exchange it once, that means that person made $100. But if that person exchanged quickly, and then that person exchanged, and that person exchanged, understand that in this big circle, we could all make $100 from the same $100. It's not the amount of money or the amount of resources. It's how fast we exchange it. And the faster the flow of money, the faster the exchange, the faster and more everybody prospers. So watch for that. If you want to see, like, get past all the media and the hype and all that junk, watch for when people start talking about doing things to restrict money. When they start to restrict flow of money, that is when you start to see a collapse economically, because that's the scarcity mindset that traps it in there.
Yeah, that whole whole hoarder mentality is actually counterproductive and detrimental, right?
Yeah.
I like what you're saying, because that is something that we can do right now. And I'm just amazed at how paralyzed we as Americans became when COVID hit and everybody went into a hoarder mentality. I've got to hoard, 9 years worth of toilet paper and all the possible cash I can get my hands on. Oh, wait, 9 years of toilet paper wasn't enough. I needed 20 years of toilet paper. Like the zombies were going to come for our toilet paper. But it really comes down to those. I mean, more millionaires are made during recessions and depressions than any other time.
That's right.
Right? Because those who go into scarcity mode and are so afraid, they just become paralyzed, fight, flight, or paralyzed. They freeze. Where people with abundance mentalities, they're the ones that are out there seizing those opportunities, making things happen with that free exchange of money. I saw a thread on Facebook a couple of weeks ago, and I think he's a millennial, probably about that age group, was having a discussion with his dad, and everybody kind of chimed in.
Mhm.
And the bottom line was, look, it's not about the minimum wage. It's not about all these other things that, social warriors want us to believe in. We all chimed in, us old guys. I think we're all 50 that were in the thread. We're just saying, go create value.
Yes.
I mean, that's really what we need to do
Yeah.
is create value. I look around at the opportunities that have been created because of COVID, and
Mhm.
it's amazing the things that have emerged that didn't exist before. It's because people got creative and said, how do I provide value? And
Right.
I even had some people challenge me with, does this really work or does that really work? And I went and tried some of these side hustles. And as long as you're providing value, it's amazing the exchange that will take place. And to your point, how quickly that will take place. Because
Yeah.
people are still eating, people are still trying to function in this society. There are opportunities out there, but you've got to look for them and get beyond this hoarding scarcity mentality. I think that is the great virus
It
that
is.
really is destroying America,
Yeah.
is
Fear is.
thinking.
Yeah.
More so than any virus. I get it. COVID's real, and people thrash me sometimes on social media because I talk about deaths of despair and other things. I don't discount the 170,000 deaths that we've had with COVID. Those are real, and those have affected a lot of families. But I think the myopic view of how this all works, this is gonna pay not good dividends, but it's gonna have an effect for generations, just like the Great Depression of the 1930s had effects for generations. This is going to affect generations from here on out. We as parents of the next generations need to raise a banner and just say there is abundance in America. Go
Mhm.
create value and people will pay you for it.
Yeah. Basically,
There
shut up
are
and stop whining.
opportunities.
Go out and create something. Be somebody better. Be someone who can actually be a value creator. Like, find ways to be more useful, right? Like, that's the thing, is that many times people go in that victim mentality and say, you know what, well, somebody should figure this out for me. Some government should help me out or pay off my student loans for me and all that kind of crap, right? But the truth is that no, you need to figure out how to create your own problems. Just like I had to dig out of $1 million plus debt hole, like I, I didn't have anybody to blame but myself. I could have blamed the economy, which that had a factor. I could have blamed the housing market and all the banks that were being dumb and corrupt at the same time, especially because my mortgage was through Lehman Brothers, right? I could have went into victim mode easily, with everything going on. But the truth is, like, I still made choices to get there, and I had to make choices to get out. That's how I was able to get out, was because I was willing to make those choices. I didn't sit around on my thumbs and wait for somebody to bail me out. I said, what can I do? What can I do to actually be useful? That's when I started teaching my cash flow stuff. The funny thing is, I stopped teaching people how to get out of the rat race in 2008 because I was back in the rat race, and I can't teach something I'm not doing. So what did I do? I started teaching people how to get resourceful, because people would say, Chris, I want to hire you, but I just can't find the money. And in the back of my mind, I was thinking, well, I guarantee I'm broke right now. I'm broker than you are. I bet you I could find the money if I were given your beautiful situation, right? So, because you're not in $1 million in debt like I am. I wouldn't say this out loud because that's not a good way to try to convince people to have confidence in me. But
Sure.
that's why I said, I'm like, well, I guarantee if I can find money, would you pay me? They're like, well, of course I would. I'm like, great. We'll do this and this, and you get creative here and here and here, and there it is. You've got money, and they would start to hire me. And so my cash flow process wasn't so much about passive income like it is today, because again, I'm out of the rat race doing the same thing, but it was more about getting creative, finding the money, getting those kind of things. That's what the Beyond Rice and Beans book is about, right? Is what were those 7 key areas I found money, for people, and including myself, and then using that to help people get out so they had money again, so they could be comfortable. And that's what all it was. Like, that thing took off. It got viral, took off, and more people wanted value from that. And I got paid money, and that helped me dig out of my situation. It's ironic, but it's kind of cool, because it's like, I didn't teach them something I wasn't doing. It was just teaching them from my own experience, the things within myself, and letting that come out. And that's exactly how I work today. It's just showing people the things, using my gifts and abilities, I believe my God-given gifts and abilities, to use in a way to bless more lives. And the cool thing is, money just keeps coming, And by the way, when you don't need money, that's when everybody wants to pay you. That's when more money comes easily, So I think it's a beautiful, abundant world, but you have to get past all the stuff that you're hearing out in the world, other people's scarce perspectives. Rise above that, transcend above that, and watch what happens. You'll start to see that there's opportunity everywhere. And in fact, because like you said, when there's fear, the same thing, fear and greed are both conditions of scarcity, and that's what drive markets. When you can look past the fear and the greed and see the opportunity in between, that's when you make the real wealth. That's when the real money comes.
Yeah, it's amazing how that works. When you don't need it, that's when it comes to you more abundantly. Right? But you can tell somebody who is on commission and has dollar signs in their eyes because they got to make this sale. It's harder than ever for that person to sell anything. But if they don't need the sale, it's amazing how that abundance is just attracted.
I call that business breath or commission breath, right? It's like you reek of it. Those are the people that throw out business cards at you and they're slicing you like Chinese stars because they're coming at you so fast. They don't even build a relationship. Just call me. You need this, right? Buy my skin product. All that kind of stuff.
Oh, what would Utah County do without lotions, potions, and stuff to put in your garage?
And there's good stuff, but it doesn't help if you come from a place of scarcity. You actually ruin a brand because you're a scarcity mentality, right? Versus, and I've been there. Trust me. Like I said, financially, I've been in worse places than most anybody I've met. I've met people who have been worse. I've met a lot of people that even if they're broke month to month, I've been there. And the thing is to still look at what's evident, what's the truth, what's the abundant spin you can take on your reality. And there's opportunity everywhere. You never know. There's just one conversation or one thing you do that can change your entire life.
And stay the course. If you really have seen that vision of what you're supposed to be, stay the course. And let's kind of end on this note. America is what it is because people take risks and start businesses to create value. I just want to underscore now more than ever before is an opportunity for people to retool, to rethink, because if you just think we're going to someday go back to the old normal, which frankly is never going to happen, you will go the way of the buggy whip and become obsolete. You need to reinvent yourself. Yes. You need to become a more valuable asset and resource to the community that you serve. You just can't think that you're going to go back to whatever you did before. Play the victim because it was destroyed. It is what it is. Those things may never come back the same way. I was reading an article that 40% of all the restaurants on Yelp have gone away over the past 8-9 months. Right. Okay. That's an absolute shame. That's a crisis for those small businesses and restaurateurs. We got to think different because we're not going to get ourselves out of the problems we've created if we think the same way that got us in those problems. We have to think differently. So maybe we can sum up and you add to this, because here's what I'm hearing you say. Take 100% responsibility for all the stupid, brainless, wicked, dumb things you've done with money in the past. Have abundance thinking and create value.
Yeah. Be a problem solver. What better time than right now to hear all the problems people are whining and complaining about to say, hey, do I have a solution for that? Could I do something? Or do I know someone who create a solution and can I be a mouthpiece for them? And then I still work in partnership with those people, right? There's so many ways to do it. And like you said, like people need to figure out how to pivot. And the best way to do it is listen to the people that you're trying to serve. Listen to the problems they're complaining about. If they're complaining about, hey, I don't want to come in your restaurant because I'm scared, great. Go to them. Find a way to get the food to them, versus, well, I hope they come in. I hope we just ride this out. It's like, that's a passive, horrible way, a victim way of living. It's no, how do we go to them? How do we do that? My best content comes because I hear what people ask and I say, if they keep asking that question, I should probably address it because that's probably a value that they need, right? It's such an easy thing when you focus from a value creator mindset versus just a victim mindset.
Well, and we're seeing a lot of that. People are in a very destructive mode right now. That's how we're going to affect change. You're not going to do it by destroying, only by creating. And the creators have always been the rare few in our society. That's just how mankind is made up. So be a creator, not a destroyer. Create value and exchange money quickly and keep it flowing in our economy. Chris, it's been an absolute pleasure sharing a few minutes with you this morning and to revisit these basics that most people just really don't know. Like we said in the opening introduction in the first few minutes together, it's not like they took you aside in sixth grade and taught you how these things work.
Mm-hmm.
We're products of the parents we grew up with, who are just products of what they learned from their parents. And we've got a lot of myths and we've got a lot of bad money psychology still out there in America today. So thanks for helping change that one person at a time. Again, for you that are listening and watching, go to moneyripples.com, moneyripples.com. Tell them a little bit more, just quickly, 30 seconds about rice and beans and also your podcast.
Yep, you can download the book for free, Beyond Rice and Beans, 7 Secrets to Free Up Cash Today, which talks about those ways that I was able to find money, right? On average, people found about $34,000 a year by doing that. Then, of course, you can check out my podcast, The Chris Miles Money Show, on iTunes or whatever your favorite podcast app is.
Hey, and I want to congratulate you. That's what started this dialogue. I heard just the milestone that you hit in your podcast. So congratulations and kudos to you. Share the news.
Thank you. I will.
Thank you very much, Chris. And thank you, everybody, for joining. And thank you for you had reached out and said, hey, let's talk about money. Because like we said in the introduction, money isn't everything unless you don't have enough of it, and then it becomes everything. So you are responsible. Make good things happen. And you can do so much more. You can serve so much better when you're not worried about money and you have the resources to bless and inspire the lives of others. So keep shining, because someone out there needs to be guided by your light. And yeah, the mission to share that light costs money. So I hope this was helpful today. Have a great day, everybody. Say goodbye, Chris.
See you later, everybody.
Subscribe to Cause TV and listen to the Cause Green audio experience on iTunes and Spotify.